Hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Choing, and I'm a senior analyst on the electric market design team here at the California Public Utilities Commission. So before we get started, I'm just going to briefly go over some logistics. So this workshop is being recorded, as I just mentioned, and it will be posted online on our resource adequacy history website. And we'll send a notice to the service list once that's available for viewing. And then just a quick reminder in this virtual environment to be aware of your surroundings and take note of any emergency exits. And also make sure that you are positioned comfortably for the duration of the workshop and take any stretch breaks as needed. So all attendees have been muted. To ask questions, please use the Q&A function and send to all panelists or raise your hand. We will be reading the questions aloud, and attendees may be unmuted to respond to the answer. And please remember to just mute back and lower your hand if it's raised after your question has been answered. So now I'm going to hand it off to Donald Brooks from the Energy Resource Modeling team to kick off the workshop. Donald?
Hello, folks. I have with me Robert Hansen and Munir Felahi in the room. We're all on the Energy Resource Modeling team. I just wanted to go through RA reform background here. Several commission decisions have iteratively adopted parts of this slice-a-day framework. As you see there, we've adopted the concept in 6 principles. The next decision adopted a 24-hour approach, and then the next one adopted additional implementation details, including compliance tools, some resource counting rules. Next slide. Then there was the next steps is what we're doing now. Test year implementation. The compliance templates that went out. We talked about that last month. There's a master resource database. I believe that's posted to the PUC website. Might even be included in the compliance templates. Planning reserve margin calibration. That's today. That's what we're doing today. Then there's LSE filings for the 2024 test year. We've set out a due date for those. Then in February of next year, there will be an assessment report assessing implementation through the first year. Next slide. The agenda for today, really 2 big items. Slice of day translation tool. We're going to demonstrate the tool and results. Munir Felahi will be leading that conversation, and there's an update to a proposal that we put out earlier this year regarding thermal derates for thermal power plants based on ambient temperatures. That's Robert Hansen. Okay, next slide. Resource adequacy slice-a-day translation tool, October 25. Munir Felahi, let's take it away. I think you have to say next slide, and Kelsey's got the slide deck.
Hi, everyone. My name is Munir Felahi from Donald's team, Resource Modeling at CPUC. I'm going to be presenting today about the slice-of-day translation tool, demo and result. Next slide, please. The main objective of the presentation today is to present a revised and updated slice-of-day tool and how it's used. Also, we're going to present the result using 2 inputs from the old input is from February 23, loss of load study, and we're going to present the result from the recent October 23 loss of load study. The outline of the presentation, first we're going to talk about some background, how to use slice-of-day framework and how we translate the loss of load study in the slice-of-day tool. Then we talk about some update since February 23 and the inputs we included. And then we talk about the process that goes into slice-of-day, how it works. And lastly, we present some results, and then we talk next steps and we'll take questions. Next slide, please. Yeah. The first segment is talk about some background and how to use of the slice-day framework and translation, the slice-day translation tools. So next one, please. So this, I think, I don't want to talk about this, but so just a little background on this RI proceeding. This slide highlights two decisions. The first one is basically saying like we directed the energy division to integrate both NRDC and Edison calibration tools to the extent possible, and then implement single PRM to all hours of the year. And the second decision directed the energy division to retain the status quo 17% PRM for the 24 and 25 RA years. Yeah, next slide, please. So this slide is a summary of the loss of load and slice of data translation in 23. So the main objective of slice of day is to translate the result from loss of load to a portfolio and energy sufficiency analysis to back up the slice of day framework in RI proceeding. And there is some background also in this slide just to keep in mind while going through this presentation. The slice of day is not just a capacity counting requirement, but is also an energy sufficiency requirement. And also, the slice of day requirement mandates firm capacity contracting, not just energy or resource availability. Also, it can get bigger a little bit, I can see. Yeah. So, and also in the slice of day framework, we are using the using 1 and 2 manage peak, not the gross peak, meaning we are taking out the stuff in the middle, like energy efficiency, EVs, time of use rate, and stuff in that nature. And just keep in mind, this slice of day is not stochastic. The loss of load study itself is stochastic, but this study is just taking the worst day from the 8760 strip. I mean, the worst day, when we say the worst day, we mean the high demand day in the 8760. So next slide, please. Yeah, like I said before, this, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to be presenting the result from two loss of load studies. The first one is from February 23, and the result for this was shown in the previous presentation with using the NRDC slice of day tool and using the November 22 baseline. And the next one we're going to show you the result. The other result is from the recent IRP proceeding. If you've been following the IRP proceeding, the result was posted in this October. And then there is a hyperlink over there if you want to look at the input and assumption that goes through into this studies. The next slide, please. So in this segment, we're just gonna talk. We're gonna show you the input. Let me see. Are we there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Just need so next slide,
yeah, next
please.
Slide, So this slide is just summarizing the loss of load study and the slice of day translation. So just a little background also, like the previous slice of day used in February 23 was based on NRDC tool, and the results PRM from that study was 8% in September. So the key assumption was used in that study was one of the key assumptions we used the 21 I per made high additional transportation and electrification. So as I mentioned, this this 8% was coming from the NRDC tool we used. The portfolio was we used for that study. It was almost reliable, meaning like 0.1 loss of load. We did some calibration, minor calibration was like 500 megawatt into the import constraint to get to 0.1. The older portfolio, we're going to show you results today from October 23. On the other hand, it was not reliable. We had to have 2,200 megawatt of perfect capacity. And then there is some difference in terms of the resources. So there is some addition. The resource was added into to the October 23 was based on the 22, based on the load serving entity plan submitted in August 22 and January 23. Next slide, please. So yeah, here is this slide is comparing the hyper 21 and 22 managed peak that goes to both studies. So the y-axis is the megawatt, the bottom axis is three different types of hypers for forecast. So the right hand, like the boxes, there is three bars over there. That's the 22 hyper planning we use in the October study. The darker blue is the 26. The middle bar is the 30, and the light blue is the 35. And the middle three bars, that's the hyper we used in the previous study in February 23, and that's the 21 hyper mid ITE. So next, and here
I'll just say what this means. The ATE is additional transportation electrification.
Yeah.
That middle box there is what we used for the previous IRP planning cycle. And so the key comparison here is that when it comes to 2026, which is not 2024, we know that, but comparing 2026 demand between those 2 years, we see that there is a slight 300 or so megawatt increase in peak demand between the mid-ATE, which we used for the February study, and the 2022 hyper planning in the box at the right that we used for the October study. So that's the key thing there.
Next slide, please. So if you remember, I said we added like some perfect capacity to calibrate the October 23 portfolio. So it was 2,200 megawatt, and then we had to translate it to our resources. So we using the marginal NCC, not the average NCCs. So we translate, so you can see there is the NCC for the batteries, and then for the solar, we use those numbers to translate this 22 megawatt to storage and solar resources. And there's more information on the IRP website if you want to see how this calculation along this input works. So the next slide, please.
Yeah, somebody asked on the chat, how much non-perfect capacity is the equivalent of the 2,200 megawatts of perfect capacity? We don't have it in this slide deck, but we'll provide that information. We translated 2,200 megawatts of perfect capacity to a mix of batteries and solar on a one-to-one basis. So 1 megawatt of battery for 1 megawatt of solar. And so I, approximately worked out to, I'll give you the ratio. It's mostly the batteries.
Okay, next slide, please.
Okay, keep going.
So on this slide, it provides the main update and improvement to the previous slides today. So the main one is this new tool. It uses unit specific, and we call it October 23 updated tool. The previous tool we call it like February 23 tool. The previous one did not use the unit specific. So for example, these were. Okay. So yeah, and this tool treated battery differently than the previous tool. We use like the efficiency, cycling, duration, and unit by and unit specific basis. It's blurry. I cannot see.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and also it used the exceedance profile, not the LCCs. The previous one used the LCC values. This tool used the exceedance values by class and by regions. You can see if you look at the workbook we sent yesterday, it has like the south and the north, and also this tool is trying to reflect the operational characteristic from production cost model into this framework, and we used hourly generation data instead of monthly. And also the DR was like made available. We made the DR like we modeled. We reflect this to reflect the DR the same way where is reflected in the production cost model, by availability, the hour where they are available and the days that they are available. So next slide, please. So yeah, this segment we talk about translation steps and the process and how the slice of day works. Keep going, please. Yeah, the first step we do is to run a loss of load study, and the loss of load in the production cost servant in the production cost we use servant. So we use 0.1 as a loss of load target. And when we get to 0.1 loss of load, it means that's how we assess if the system is reliable or not. If not, then we add like some perfect capacity to make it 0.1. And in this, the second portfolio, we had 2,200 megawatt, and we were talking in the previous slide how we translate to solar and storage using the marginal LCCs. That's the first step. Then we input also in the tool the CEC 1 and 2 managed peak. The managed peak, like we mentioned before, is we have taken the behind the meter stuff out, like in energy efficiency, EV, time of use rate, and behind the meter batteries. Also, the input, then we input the portfolio from the loss of load into the slice of day, and we input the nameplate, but when we're doing the calculation, we are not using the nameplate. We're using the NQCs, and then the exceedance values for the renewables for solar and wind. And just to mention, we are not including the outages. We're not doing the UCAP framework yet, but maybe in the future we'll do. So, can next slide, please? Yeah, and this slide is just talk about like how we treat battery important DR. So the batteries in this tool, we make them available from hour 16 or 17 to 21. That's based on what we saw in the production cost model, and based on what we would expect in days like this, the batteries will be saved as a last resort to provide like energy in these tight hours. The batteries also, not the only batteries, but also with the same thing for pump storage. And the other thing is the import. The import is, we set the import to 4,000 megawatt during all the 24 hours, not just the peak hours. So from hour 1 to 24, the available import is 4,000. And as I mentioned before, demand response is is the reflection what's in servant, like the daily and hourly availability is not available 24 hours. I believe it's like 5 or 6 hours during the day. Next slide, please.
Yeah, just to answer the question I saw pop up in chat, the real capacity we added to replace the perfect capacity was batteries and solar individually. This wasn't a hybrid resource that we put in. and in the PRM calibration tool, demand response and batteries are dispatched at a fixed profile, just like solar and wind and everything else. And we let batteries discharge over 6 or 5 hours because that is how they're dispatched in the production cost model and in the real ISO market. We're seeing that batteries are not just this 4-hour square at a certain time. We're seeing that in the real market, they're kind of faded in over 5 or 6 hours. It's a more realistic dispatch of how the batteries work. And we made that, translated that to this tool. That's what we're trying to say here.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, you'll see that when we go through the tool itself. And PSH means pump storage hydro. So that's just another bunch of storage, only a long duration storage.
Yeah. And this slide is just comparing the 21 per ITE, additional transportation and electrification, and 22 planning per management. So the reason for this comparison because we are providing the result for 2 portfolios, one from February 23 and the other one from October 23. The February 23 portfolio used the 21 per ITE, and the new portfolio from October 23 used 22 planning per managed peak forecast. And you see they are similar, and they're almost similar. So the bottom, the x-axis is the 24 hours, and then the left axis is the megawatt, and tells you how much in each hour. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and we had to calibrate the October 2023 study. You can see it there. This is just the total of what's in the 2 portfolios.
Okay, so this is we showed you the managed peak. This one is showing you the supply side. So it's not the nameplate, but you can see it's like the NQCs. And I cannot see the bottom, but the bottom, I think the difference is very small. It's like 168 megawatt between the 2. But the main difference is coming from the perfect capacity from solar and the wind, solar and the batteries. So, yeah. Next slide, please. So, yeah, and then once we put all this information in the slice of day tool, like the demand side and supply side, and then reflecting the characteristic of this unit into the slice of day framework, then we solve it running solver. So if you want to look at more what we did, you can look at the 2 workbook we sent yesterday. You can see the objective function and then the constraint we use to solve for this PRM. So one of the main constraints is we need to have enough capacity to charge the batteries. Okay, next slide, please. So when we're solving, the solver will pick the critical hours. In this case, I can show you the result later. And then the most constrained hour, it was like hour ending 19. And that's where we got like the result we're going to show you in the next slides. Okay, next, please. Yeah, this segment is about the result. If you keep going, please. So this is the result from the old portfolio, from the February 23 portfolio. If you look at the workbook, you can get those numbers. But this is a graph showing you the margin or the PRM across 24 hours. So when there is low demand, you see there is a higher margin, like 60 or 50%. As you keep going throughout the day, as demand solar decreases and demand start increasing, then the margin gets smaller and smaller until if you hour 19, that's the smallest margin is 6.2. So that's why solver picks those the PRM of 6.2%. Mm-hmm. So, can you next slide, please?
I think after this slide, we should stop and answer some questions.
Oh.
A lot of people on WebEx want to ask questions, and they can't unmute themselves until the Q&A period. So.
Okay. All right. Well, this slide is similar to the previous one, but this is the result for October 23. The previous one, the PRM was 6.2%, and with the new portfolio has a PRM of 7.3% to 1% per month different. So, but the same concept. You see the margin PRM is higher, and they're in early hours during the day because the demand is lower, and then there's enough resources. As we go through the day, the margin decreases, and that's why we get like 7.3 an hour 19 as the PRM. Yeah. Okay, we want to stop or we want to keep going on? Can we go one more slide and then we can stop? We have only one more slide left.
Yeah. Okay. That's our last slide showing resources operating across the 24-hour time frame, and you can see how that, I guess, cream color is the batteries, and you see that in the model they operate over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours there. And you can see how hour ending 19 is the smallest margin. And you can see how all the other resources accommodate over a 24-hour time frame. Let's open this up for questions. We'll enter Q&A period now, and then we'll let people ask questions.
There's one more slide left if you want to go through that and then take the Q&A.
All right. Maybe we go through one more slide, and then we'll do the questions.
This next steps, and that's it, I guess. Oh, yeah. So yeah, this is the last slide, and then we go Q&A. Just the next step. So the plan is to reuse allocation for our using the 6.2% and test it in the compliance tool. Then I think the second step is already done. We posted the slides today and the two workbooks. Then the other step is we take informal comment from the parties, and then we present the final slides of the tool for parties to evaluate in Q1 2004. So, and we provide the update and learning from the test year implementation. And lastly, we refine the slides of the methodology as needed via RI proposal in Q1 24, and then possibly we can add the UCAP to this framework. And now we can take questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we want to enter Q&A? Maybe raise your hand, and we'll unmute you, and then allow you to answer questions.
Okay, apparently people are having issues raising their hands in this webinar. Let me see if I can try and fix that.
Well, we have a bunch of questions on the chat, and until people are allowed to raise their hands or figure out how to raise their hands, I'll go through some of them. Yeah, so I think a lot of people are asking questions about which portfolio we put out in the allocations that went out yesterday. The allocations that went out yesterday had a 6.2% PRM in them, and that 6.2% PRM was equivalent equivalent to the results from the February 2023 study. As directed, we were to implement the earlier February 2023 study in our Slice Today tool. We're just giving you two results here to show how a different portfolio provides a slightly different PRM, but you know, how it plays out across a different portfolio. This portfolio, both these portfolios result in a 1 in 10 day loss of load over in a serve analysis, and the reason for that is that these are annualized portfolios. It doesn't mean to say necessarily that off-peak months you can release a bunch of the contracts that you have in the peak months. But we were instructed, in keeping with decision, we also were to provide a PRM that was going to be the same across all 12 months. Maybe, you know, as we test this implementation over the course of this year, we could propose refinements, including potentially different PRMs in different months. I don't know if I'm answering any of the questions. Can someone respond at least on chat whether I'm getting some of the questions? Robert, how is storage dispatch working in the in the compliance tool?
So there's, I think this question is about the optimization. The optimization tool within the template allows users to input storage resources, and then it fills in for hours where there is a deficit between the requirements and the already shown capacities of non-storage or non-optimized storage. So it just fills in up to the requirement whenever there is a deficit.
Can that deficit be more than 4 hours?
Yes.
Okay. So the tool is going to optimize batteries to fill in deficits, even if it's longer than, so it's not a fixed profile in your tool?
Correct.
Excellent.
There is an option to input either a default or a custom profile, and those can be fixed to 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever you want.
So to get the function that we used for this particular analysis, you would allow the tool to optimize the storage.
That would probably get it close.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Kyle? Can you respond on chat if I get your question there? Or Nick, I guess, asked that question. You can link to the latest version of the tool. Uh, 6% in a loss of load study is not the same as a 6% in this tool. That 6% is really meant to be the minimum energy margin over the peak demand or the hourly demand. And the PRM tool we're showing you here is after optimizing. So
one question that's only for September. Oh, there's a question over there.
Yeah. And the 6% PRM for all months in the slice a day tool may be a different number in different months. We will show you what the slice a day tool says for all the different months. But this is a September analysis, and it's the most constrained month. So we will. So that's the PRM that we're using for our test year.
Okay, let's go to Nick now.
Hey, thanks, Simone. Sorry about the premature unmute there. Nick Pappas, thanks, Donald, and everybody for hosting this. I just wanted to go back to the discussion before the switch on the storage dispatch. It sounded like storage is being optimized for dispatch. I'm trying to just kind of clarify that with what's in the PRM tool. The PRM calibration tool appears to show storage on fixed profiles across 6 hours. Donald, I just sent an email with you with a graphic kind of showing that representative day. So just want to clarify if that's if the comments before are limited to the LSE showing tool, or kind of how that interacts with the PRM calibration tool. I think this is a very critical mechanical connection between the calibration and how LSEs will actually show.
All right, I'm going to my email, trying to find that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to drop the image into the chat, but happy to talk through it if you can't find the image.
Yeah. All right, I'm getting there. Munir, the PRM calibration tool that you did, that's not a fixed profile for storage, is it? Why don't we crack open so that is PRM check, and what is it showing? It's showing storage. That's not a fixed profile. That's your graphic. Let's see if we can, why don't we just open the PRM tool?
Yeah, Donald, maybe as a shortcut there, looking at the final output tab in the PRM tool, it shows 6,029 megawatts from hour ending 16 through 21.
All right, we should probably be navigating this. Permission to share there. I think we're going to share. I'd like to share a Microsoft Excel here, the one that we sent out to parties last night. I think we ought to be able to walk through it here.
Oh.
Granted.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, now we're sharing Microsoft Excel. Here's our PRM tool. Let's blow that up a little bit. I just opened, can't see which one I opened.
So go to system profiles, like this, the profile.
Oh. I opened the 2021 IFR. So this is the one with the 6.2% reserve margin. What do you want to show there, Munir?
So the profile, you're talking about this system profile shows you what the batteries, but what hours they are available.
Yeah, that's just it showing that it's available for 5 hours, but it's not like it's dispatched for 5 hours. The final output or the dashboard here shows you what it's actually doing over the 5 hours. Yeah. We have we have the numbers at least, and we could show, that the batteries.
2,500 megawatt.
20. Which one is it? Which one's the batteries? That one. That's the batteries. Yeah. Okay. So that's flat. Why is that flat?
But we have the energy will distribute equally across 5 hours.
Why did we do that? Did we do that on purpose, or was that the solver that did that?
That's the way we did it. Like,
okay.
We have like 4 hours, but like we distribute it like across 5 or 6 hours to get to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a fixed profile here, but it sounds like the RA compliance tool allows that to be optimized. Okay. Okay. Well, that looked like that was flat in the tool then.
Donald, can I just clarify, is this the same worksheet that was sent out last night? I'm showing 6,000 for storage in the 2022 PRM slice a day tool.
What is it?
This is a tool that was based on the ATE. See how I'm showing the name of the tool that we've got open here?
Got it.
The other one that we sent out last night is the one from the October study. So this is the one from the February study.
Got it. Okay. So I may be looking at the wrong spreadsheet, but it does appear maybe to have the same issue. So just want to flag that's going to be a very important connection with the LSE showings.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So okay. So that's demonstrated that we seem to have had storage as a flat across here. So what did the solver do when we ran the solver? Okay. All right, Lauren Carr has raised a hand. Do we want to let her ask her question?
Let's go to Greg first. He's been waiting. You're unmuted, Greg.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you, Donald. I think I'm still stuck on the battery stuff, so I'll yield my spot until we get through this battery discussion. And I may come back later. I'll lower my hand now.
Kyle?
Advocates. So on these two workbooks, I noticed in row 28, if you double click on one of those formulas, they don't include the final row of supply. In other words, SoCal wind. I was wondering if there's a reason for that.
There's SoCal, do they not showing?
Showing there.
So just if you double click on one of the row 28 cells, you'll see that it only sums through row 24.
Oh. Oops. All right.
Right. And so then when I ran I think I was replicating the solver as you did. I was getting PRMs on this spreadsheet, I think that were 8.2% and on the other for 8.6%. That's all.
Is that really? Final output's T2. This one's final output's okay. Final output's T2. Okay, why did that do that? All right, we'll look into that. Now, okay. Some of that, some of X24. Yeah, looks like that was only summoned through X24.
Okay, let's go to Noah.
Okay, so there's that. All right, now it's 955, which is a much bigger number. Well, if that's an error, then thanks for finding it. We'll definitely evaluate. I don't know if we're going to be re-sending the temp. We'll talk about whether we want to redo the allocations. If this number changes, then we'll reissue these templates, or we'll reissue these slice a day tools. All right. All right.
Are you ready for Noah now, Donald?
Yeah, we're ready for Noah now.
Morning, Donald. Hey, so following up on Nick's question, I think I'm just trying to understand. I know you guys said that with regards to the battery storage, that in the production cost modeling, it turned out to be 5 hours, and so the same amount of P max or a QC is divided by 5 rather than sort of divided by 4, right? And so, but I'm trying to understand what Nick is saying about the optimization. Is the expectation that it'll be used more than 5 hours or less than 5 hours overall with regards to the showing? Because if we're simply on a 4-hour basis, then it would increase this 2,500 megawatt block that you have, right? Is that right?
The energy will be the same across all the
the total energy
Right,
will be the same.
But the amount, of
fewer.
2,500 will be higher if it's a 4-hour block, right? Because you're expecting to use the same amount of energy divided by 4 rather than divided by 5.
The smaller, if it's a shorter number of hours, the energy will be split. It'll be a bigger amount per hour. But then you get to the point where you get a higher PRM, but then it collapses in the next hour. Then the next hour becomes binding. I think what we were trying to do is find a way that we didn't just we didn't just move it to the next hour to be binding.
You would move it to the next hour to be binding?
When we move, if we spread the batteries over 4 hours instead of 5, you can see that it would take away the power. It would take away the energy in hour ending 21, and then that might become binding.
It will depend on the energy in the hour in the previous hours. Like for example, in hour 16 or 17, if there is not enough energy, that's probably become the hour that's the most constrained hour in optimization. But in this case, we spread it there 5 hours because 17 was that make more sense within 7, and the hour 19 was the most constrained. So if we move it, we can move it, but probably we're going to have a different. If we do it over 4 hours, probably we can have other hours become more constrained, but we can try that too. But.
Yeah, I guess in planning space, I'm simply wondering whether or not we should keep it as a 4-hour product. I think that's what's being transacted in the market for capacity. Rather than a 5-hour dispatch, which is what you're certainly seeing, and I can agree that you might be seeing longer duration as the ISO dispatch stretches out. But for planning purposes, it should be relative to the product that's being transacted.
Well, the product that's being transacted is a battery that has a max capacity and a storage of energy equal to 4 times the max capacity, but that doesn't necessarily say anything about its hourly dispatch. The product you're buying is a product that has a certain amount of energy that can be scheduled over the times when ISO needs it. Maybe
Agreed.
I just redefined product for you.
The purpose of this. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, I think this is where the slice of day product breaks down a little bit with what the ISO has, right? I agree that overall the must offer obligations is 24 hours, and the ISO has the capability of dispatching it to meet load as necessary. But the product is still, a 50 megawatt 4-hour battery. It is, I think, will still be shown on the plans as a 50 megawatt battery, not a 40 megawatt over 5 hours.
As we just mentioned, the compliance tool is going to let you potentially optimize it so that the battery fills in wherever it's needed.
Agreed, but I think that what you're missing is what is the translation between the slice of day optimization to the ISO's RA plans on the QC basis, because your optimization is not what the QC or the NQC value that would be shown, and that's what's missing.
Yeah, well, there's another wrinkle to be worked out. Let's make sure we keep track of this. Yeah, we will have a proposal. We may have a proposal later, after the evaluation report that gives us a chance to refine or tweak this. This was, a test year to find all these wrinkles. Let's put a pin in that one.
Well, I mean, I think this is important to figure or fix this before you get into test year. I feel like we're saying that, oh, it's just test year, so let's go with what we have. But if we set up the structure improperly, we're not going to find the right result for your February report.
All right.
So this is Jamie. I just want to kind of step in and kind of note, Donald and team, that QC, I think the issue that's being raised here is important because, Noah is correct. The way that these contracts are structured is they're 4-hour products, and that is the qualifying capacity value that is required to CAISO. It's not being, the must offer isn't being based upon a 5-hour or 6-hour product or 4-hour contract structures. So let's take this back and talk internally about how we can make a revision to address this.
Well, it does sound like we're asking for multiple variants of this tool, one that includes more months and one that shows batteries dispatched over different intervals. Munir was just saying that the optimization routine is important here. We could show you, I guess, what the slice a day tool with batteries optimized. We should do that
With
the way it's working in the RA compliance tool.
We can do that. Yeah.
We should optimize the batteries here to see how they actually fill in. So that makes sense.
Okay.
So, all right. I guess we'll reissue these. I think we'll take it back as to how we will implement this framework for the test year and what deadlines turn out to be. Okay. All right. Let's keep going through the questions and pointing out issues to keep track of.
Matt Barmack.
Oh yeah. Hey, this is Matt Barmack with Calpine. I had 2 questions. The first is probably more of an IRP question, and I was just wondering, the 2.2 gigawatts of PCAP that you added to get back to 1 in 10. Do you know to what extent that overlaps with resources that we expect to come online next year, say for MTR procurement, or is is most of that already in the baseline?
If it was in the baseline, we wouldn't have added PCAP. This portfolio here is baseline only. So this corresponds to the baseline only studies that we did in IRP, showing that 2,200 megawatts of PCAP need comes directly from the baseline only variant of the IRP studies that we just released and talked about last week.
Okay.
The 2,200 megawatts of PCAP, when translated to batteries and storage, likely overlap a considerable amount of what's in the, of what utilities and LSEs are bringing forward for their MTR compliance. We did an analysis of that and kind of lines things up. We just haven't published that analysis yet, but we are confident that a sizable portion of that 2,200 megawatts is represented by stuff that the utilities and the LSEs are bringing forward for MPR compliance. So this wasn't, so we weren't super scared by that outcome, knowing more needed to be built because we saw all this other stuff that was already being built, basically.
Okay, that's super helpful. And then the second question is really about the calibration tool. And I just don't remember the whole history of this issue, but I was just wondering if you could compare, you know, sort of what you're presenting now to the 13% that was the basis for the initial allocations that were sent out, I guess, a few weeks ago. And I think that 13% may have come from some other calibration exercise that I'm forgetting. But if you could just comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Right. There was an error in the just to make it clear, the 13% result that went out in the templates was based on internal drafts of this tool, and the portfolio translated into that tool erroneously included a different total that may have included a bunch of PCAP not needed for this calibration, but was put into the tool based on some other work we were doing. So that was an error. That 13% was an error.
Okay. But if I remember maybe way back, you know, you sort of proposed something based on a month that was slightly less tight, like maybe July, and then applying that to the whole year instead of September. That's not where the 13% comes from.
I don't think that's what happened there.
Okay.
It was an error, and I don't remember the forensics on that particular error, but it didn't look like anything we did on purpose.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Donald.
And Matt,
that-
this is
Yeah.
Jamie. Just to give you a little bit more color, I think, you know, the recollection you're having is last year around the same time we had workshops, working groups on the various, you know, slice a day implementation. And Astrape had presented on behalf of Energy Division some stress tests of how we could address this, you know, annual to monthly issue that's been raised already in the chat. So if you look back at the website, there's you know, a recording of that workshop as well as the slide decks, and then the actual workshop report does provide a narrative about this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I mean, because I am, along with others, very, very concerned about this issue of applying, you know, a PRM from the tightest month to the whole year, because I'm not sure that yields back, you know, the portfolio that you modeled as 1 in 10 in Servum.
Yeah, it might do it adequately for the month of September.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's keep going. Let's chug through the questions. We probably have another 20 minutes here that we can devote to these questions, and then then we ought to really get to Robert's presentation.
All right.
Perry Servideo at CISA, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. I had a similar question to Noah, just diving into these energy storage numbers here and the 6 hour sort of thing. I don't think conceptually there's anything wrong with saying, look, the batteries are available over the 6 hours, which is what I think you're trying to do on the set profiles tab. But my concern is I'm wondering how much available energy that you're limiting to. There's really 2 constraints in my mind. There's the total available energy, say in a cycle over a day. And then the second is to make sure that these hourly values are not in violation of the total capacity available. So like I said, there's nothing particularly wrong with seeing storage dispatched over more than 4 hours here, I don't think. If it's the right thing to do, but you do have to confirm you aren't violating the total energy available in a cycle and the total Pmax in any given hour. So I'm wondering, what are you modeling as the total energy available and the total Pmax available?
You may be seeing our spreadsheet now. Am I still sharing this?
Yes.
Yeah, you're still sharing this. So this is different from, or at least from the one I'm looking at that was circulated. So what is the
tab? It has total energy over 5 hours, and there's a pond cap, which roughly translates to just storage times 4. That storage times 4, and that storage times 4 times 0.85, because that's losses, and then that's this number divided by 5.
So is this, my question, I guess, is the 14,000 number, that's your total available?
Yeah,
That's
that's
not your total
storage megawatts,
energy?
storage capacity times 4.
Okay, so if I divide that by 4, that should match up with what's actually available on the system, which is 3.7 gigawatts.
3731. So let's go to the dashboard. Let's see if 3731.
So we don't violate that.
Okay, storage. Where's 3731?
No, that's because you divide by 4. This divided
by 4. Okay, now where do I go with the portfolio? It's not in here.
I didn't mean to, like, we don't have to do it on the fly here. I want to understand that storage tab though. So this is,
and then that's just this number times 0.85 because we have losses turns into that number. See, and then that just becomes this number divided by 5. Boom. That's all that is.
okay. So, but the key is, I think, if I'm understanding this, is what you're trying to represent is that there's 3.7 gigawatts of capacity of energy storage capacity of batteries. Yeah. And the total energy
with storage. Yeah.
And then the total energy that those can actually provide then is usually, let's say, in one cycle on a 4-hour basis, just making the assumption, would then be that 37 times the 4, which gets you to that 14,927, right? You're right back to the 14. So the 14,927 is the real energy, the total energy cap. So as long as you're over 6 hours, you're not using more than the, say, 15 gigawatts of energy. Then I think that's the real constraint, that number and the 3731 number. Okay, and then I had thanks for walking me through that. I got confused because the tab on the one I have shows much bigger numbers on this storage tab. So I'll look forward to the
using a different portfolio. Most likely what happened is that a significant portion of the PCAP we added was storage.
Okay, then that's a good transition to my next question, which was, I believe, on slide 16. And I just for clarity's sake, you were talking about you added 2 gigawatts back to get to 0.1 LOLE. And you said you've added them 1-to-1 back in storage and solar. Can you walk me through what that actually means, the quantities that you're adding 2.2 gigawatts of perfect capacity back, and does that mean that you went into that matrix that's on slide 16 and found the percentages and took the inverse, or can you just show me like a simple example of that?
Okay, let's do that then. So I'm sharing the Excel. Let's stop. Share Edge. There it is. Okay. I think that's my slide you're concerned with.
No, well, it's just a clarifying question.
Okay.
So you've added it back 1-to-1
Here's
basis.
what happened. 1-to-1. Yeah, is that your slide you want to ask about?
Yeah.
Got it. So 2,200 was the total PCAP we wanted to add. Total batteries are that number, and total solar is that number, which means 15,000 megawatts. Where's 15? There's 15 right there. Where's solar at 15? There's storage at 15, solar at 30. There it is, 70%. So the marginal storage has 70% exceedance, right? They both say, so what's the solar get? 30,000. Let's go to where 30 is solar, and batteries are 15. Solar is 13%. Okay.
Okay.
So does that make sense? So that the batteries, so you just make a table that takes 1-for-1 increase in batteries and storage, and you just keep adding until the total is 2,200 megawatts of converted nameplate to PCAP, nameplate to PCAP, right?
So you
I might
use
even
70.
do that, right?
You use 70% on the batteries and some
Let's just do that here. So it's
Walk the wheel.
0.7. Am I sharing the Excel now, or am I not sharing anything now?
No share.
Not sharing anything. All right, share the Excel then. Okay, there's 0.7 and there's 0.13, and then we're just going to say 500 each, and then it's going to be equals this times this, and let's make this be all this. I want to do that.
I got it. I follow. I just wanted to clarify it was that.
I couldn't find this one chart that I made, but this is how we do this. Okay, what's L? It's M. This is M. Let's make that be M.
Hey, Donald,
Okay.
this is Jamie. I'm
Yeah.
just doing a time check. We got a lot of hands in the queue
Yeah.
here. So I think we should keep moving along here.
Yeah, let's keep going. But I'll just and this I think I can do this in 2 seconds. But let's move to the next question.
Thanks, Donald. I understand
this question
which
while I'm
percentage
building my little,
you're using.
so clearly this is how I went and did this. Until they equal comes to 22, right? So that almost hits 22 right there. Maybe one more row gets me there.
Do 20.
Yeah, that is 24. So somewhere between that. So that's about 25 to 3,000 of each gets me to my 22. There's what? That'd be 2075 or something. Cool.
So you've probably added about 1,900 megawatts of batteries and about 400 megawatts of solar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So we already. So that's pretty close to what we added right there.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Brian? Are you there, Brian Baker? All right, let's go to Jay Strickland for now.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you guys again for hosting this workshop and being so receptive to feedback. I appreciate, how transparent you're being and walking through everything. This question is mainly for Robert. Just from a practical standpoint, I'm just trying to make sure I understand correctly and can explain clearly to another person. For the PRM tool change that we're seeing, right? Now that it's going from 13% down to 6% and some change, when you put that into the individual allocations for the individual LSC templates, right? My intuitive understanding is that on net should make them longer from an RA standpoint under the hourly slice of date framework. Is that an accurate way to look at that, or am I thinking the right way?
That might be a question for Kelsey, who puts together the allocations.
Jay, I'm not quite understanding your question here. So, so the PRM is hard coded into the allocations. So your hourly system requirement is inclusive of that PRM. So previously it was 13% and it's been reduced down to 6.2%. So I guess, I mean, your requirement is lower now. So, you know, assuming you have the same amount of capacity contracted for that, you would be longer. So is that what your question is?
That's absolutely my question.
Okay, great.
Thanks for answering that. So outside of looking at how this impacts the LLC requirements from an individual LLC perspective, they're not, you know, that's the only thing they need to understand coming out of this tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Donald, it's Brian Thaker with Middle River. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, two questions. First, I just want to go back to that previous discussion that seemed to confirm that the PRM that the tool determined for September would not be an adequate PRM across an entire year. Do I have that right?
Well, it represents the amount of energy at a minimum that needs to be presented across the most constrained hour. And so as long as we're able to create a portfolio in each month that presents at least 6% of energy in a constrained hour, that fulfills our obligation. And I think, like I said, we may have said, the slice a day tool is not just a capacity calibration tool, it's a energy sufficiency tool as well.
Okay, and I think that leads nicely into my second question. You use the term minimum energy margin. Can you elaborate as to what you mean by that?
Let's go to this. Let's go to this edge right there. There. That means a margin at hour ending 19 is as low as it's going to get. That's 6.2% margin.
Okay, but then in the lower left-hand corner, it seems to suggest that's a capacity margin. I'm a little confused by the use of the term energy.
Yeah, that sufficient excess capacity is probably sufficient excess energy, right?
That's after you charge the battery. That's what the leftover after the energy and
to charge the batteries, right?
So there is a constraint in optimization. The batteries has to need to meet, like, they have to get sufficient energy to charge the batteries. But that one is just like the whatever left over after you charging the battery and pump storage. That's the leftover energy, the available excess.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Through our 24 hours now. So that's excess.
Thank you.
Lauren?
It's Kelsey CA. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know if staff is going to calibrate the effective PRM the same way that it did the PRM.
I'll take
The
it.
effective PRM was more a statement of what resources were available on the to meet on the NQC list. Then it was a statement of results of a study. So so it may not fit in this slice a day tool.
I'll just add, Lauren, that I think we are aware that the recent decision, you know, adopting the 17% planning reserve margin and extending the effective PRM through 2025 likely needs to be revised or refreshed to account for the slice a day construct, which will go be binding in 2025. So we have to think through that gap there and what it means for the effective PRM.
Okay, so you do think the effective PRM would need to be modified in some way to align with slice of day and this calibrated PRM?
Well, we have to think through it. So I don't think we've gotten that far into thinking about it. If you have thoughts on it, you can share them informally in informal comments. But my understanding is that the summer reliability proceeding and then in the most recent RA proceeding, we adopted a megawatt amount that the utilities were allocated to meet for 2024 and 2025. So I'm not sure if that megawatt amount will change. Yeah, I guess we'd have to think through it. Do you have any thoughts?
To me, I think it makes sense to calibrate the effective PRM as you do the regular PRM. The effective PRM, while I know it does translate to a megawatt amount, it was set, I think, using like the ELCC. And then once we're moving to exceedance for solar and wind under slice of day, I don't think it makes sense to change one PRM but not the other. So I would recommend that we do calibrate both the PRM and the effective PRM. And we can put more about that in informal comments, but that would be my recommendation at this point for us to consider.
Thanks for that, Lauren.
And when are informal comments due? Sorry if I missed that.
Donald, I don't think we've have a date on informal comments for this that we've set, correct?
No, we have not set a date. We will set a date and publicize it for the parties.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up on a question from Matt Barmack earlier, discussing the 2200 megawatt shortfall and overlap with MTR procurement. So if I look at the MTR sufficiency analysis that was presented in the IRP ruling, and I look at the results for year 2024, it does show a Servim PCAP shortfall using the PSP baseline of 2200 megawatts. So I'm wondering if is it the same 2200 megawatts? Are these similar runs, the same run?
The same study went in here. That's what we were trying to mean by the October 2023 study is the study we did, the baseline only scenario for the IRP. That's where that came from.
So then I think this analysis would answer Matt's question as to how much overlap is there between the MTR procurement, because this analysis shows an additional 3,781 megawatts of MTR procurement above it, the baseline already ordered. And so that should cover the 2,200. Does that make sense?
That does.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, that's where that comes from. Yep. I just forgot the exact number.
Have any additional questions right now?
Well, All right, Perry.
Or Christy.
Yeah, I'll spend another few minutes going through questions.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks, Donald, for presenting, and thank you, everyone. I just wanted to put a plug in for something that Noah put into the chat. Just, I think it would help to do those kind of stress tests that we, saw Strawberry present last year, because I'm a bit worried that, when the September peak was used as the basis for the PRM in those workshops, we did see that there was like a 0.4 LOLE across the year when that methodology was taken. So I think the stress testing would definitely help kind of understand whether this is, sufficient for a 0.1, on an annual basis. I think, just looking at that 6.2%, that's basically covering operating reserves. We also buy regulation on the system and forced outages. So I'm not sure how the 6.2 will be able to cover that additional risk as well. So I think, this would sit a lot better if there was additional testing that was kind of done to show that this would, be reliable across the year. So I just wanted to put that plug in for what Noah put in the chat.
Well, outages and operating reserves are both part of the underlying loss of load study. That's how I'll think that those are handled in the underlying loss of load study that created the portfolio that is implemented through this slice a day tool. If you can get, yeah, that is implemented through the underlying slice a day tool. That overall resource portfolio is created from a study that studied operating reserve requirements and forced outages.
And then what was can you talk a little bit about the forced outage assumptions that were made as well?
Those forced outage assumptions are detailed in the inputs and assumptions document that we put out probably a month and a half ago with regards to preferred system plan modeling.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Donald, it's Perry again, CISA. I just had to ask here in the end, just to clarify is, how were I guess I should say, if the hybrids were considered in this tool, how were they considered in this tool?
How are the hybrids taken care of?
Yeah, we just the solar from the hybrid added to the solar, and then the storage part added to storage.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's fairly straightforward. So then my question is back. I believe it was on slide 17. Was the treatment of the solar portion of the hybrid, even if energy only, still considered as energy?
What did we do with energy only?
No, we didn't count only the RI requirement.
I think it was allowed to charge, the energy only was allowed to charge batteries, but then, yeah, so the energy only resources were allowed to charge the batteries. I don't think we specifically cut them off.
But we base the resource on the master resource database. If the resource is not there, then it's not included in the study. So.
Oh, okay. So the PRM calculation did not include a PRM amount for energy only stuff.
From Servant, but like we match it, we get the QC from the for master resource database.
Yeah. Okay. And all the exceedance profiles from the MRD as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe take that note. I believe we're supposed to allow the energy only portion of a hybrid or co-located resource to be able to charge to the battery. So that might be one other thing to consider here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, I just wanted to make a comment or a plug to Christie's question about stress testing and flag a couple items I put into the chat around the mechanics here. So I totally agree with your point. The operating reserves analysis should absolutely flow from the LOLE modeling, on a probabilistic hourly basis. My concern is that if we don't test the PRM calibration tool to the LSE showing tool, we may not get the portfolios we think we're getting that were calibrated in that LOLE model. So I think we've identified a couple issues with that occurring in September today, as I put in the chat, just taking the PRM slightly modified to address the SoCal wind issue, getting an 8.2% PRM. You don't actually need nearly as much storage as an LSE to comply. You can drop by about, I think it's about 1,200 megawatts, and you definitely don't need the energy limits. That issue is also very present, as we've shared in comments in the past, in other months, particularly if you apply the same PRM. So I think some just spreadsheet-based benchmarking between those two tools to see what you actually get with different PRMs could be really informative to understand how these compliance frameworks actually link back to that LOLE study. So just want to put a plug in for that, doing that both on the sort of September peak or risk month that we're looking at, as well as these other months, particularly if the PRM just flows from September to these other months.
Yeah, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Do you know what that, how to do that, Mooney? Are we going to be able to do that?
We can provide different time for different months. Yeah.
For different months. Okay.
Then we can do maybe the stress test if you want.
Thanks. So we have probably about 45 minutes left in the webinar today, or the time we've set aside. All right, Nick, we'll answer your question, and then I think we got to move on to Robert's slide deck. And I guess since it's showing, I'll share it here.
Hey, Donald, this is Noah. Can we talk about just quick next steps? I know you guys are asking for informal comments, but it's somewhat unclear to me on when Energy Division is going to set a date of releasing sort of more of an annualized analysis and spreadsheets. Because I think I know you guys want to do final SOD tools in Q1, but I think the new OIR also has proposals due sometime in that period, right? So it would be helpful, I think, if we can set some milestones for parties to, and as well as Energy Division to release the data, talk about data, so that we can all be informed as we go into the OIR.
That makes sense, and I find your suggestions very helpful. Informal comments for parties, what, week or 10 days from now makes sense. You're able to, just since yesterday release of the materials, people have been able to stress test the spreadsheets and workbooks at least. Maybe a week to 10 days for informal comments from parties. I guess final slice a day tool should come, well, a subsequent set of slice a day tools should come subsequent to that. Thinking on the fly here, that would mean, what is it, October 25 today? Probably within a month, maybe before Thanksgiving, we ought to put out another slice a day tool.
What's the implementation? What time?
All these questions that we've been asked about different months of the year, fixing the formula thing we just found, and
formula can be fixed quick and
constraint and like optimizing the batteries.
Oh, that's the probably going to take a little, but we can provide the months.
Yeah.
And the other one, but the optimization probably is going to maybe take, we need to think about that a little bit longer. We can provide a version with 4 hours and see, like, with equal distribution of energy, that would be quick. But, like, if you want to implement
then we'll spend a few days working on the optimization tool to see how we can get the batteries to be optimized like it is in the RA compliance tool. That means a week to 10 days for people to submit informal comments. So that means in a week to 10 days, let's see what we can do. All right. Did that all make sense, Jamie?
That sounds good. Yeah, I've been taking notes just on the feedback we've received today, and I think, you know, setting some kind of informal timeline that we could release to the service list on when we're gonna, you know, release the updates would be good. So let's just talk internally after the workshop, and then we will communicate back to parties via the service list.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it would be great to get a look at the full year analysis.
That makes sense. All right. On that note, let's move on. We got to get to our last presentation here, which conveniently is located right after this next step slide for some reason. All right. So I'm looking at two screens now, and every time I move it here, it moves there, and then I get confused. Okay. All right. Update derating thermal power plants based on ambient temperatures. Rob Hansen, you got it. Let's do that.
I have control.
You have control.
All right. Okay. My name is Robert Hansen. I'm an engineer in the resource modeling team, and some of you may remember actually, I'm going to move the microphone closer to me. I don't speak very loudly. I presented in, I believe, March, preliminary methodology for derating thermal power plants on the basis of ambient temperatures. This presentation focuses on a revision to that methodology that we worked on earlier this year and after I presented the original methodology. So this presentation will look at the revised methodology and then walk through some of the preliminary results in terms of the data, and we're going to visualize a subset of the results. So first, let's look at the changes to the methodology. Hopefully, people are somewhat familiar with the original methodology. As I mentioned, we presented the original methodology in March of this year. I think we released it maybe a little bit earlier in February. Some of the main changes that we made to the original methodology that you'll see in this revision is that we have imputed 0 curtailments where there was not data. So if you'll recall, the data that we're using for this project comes from CAISO's hourly curtailment reports or daily curtailment reports that are published daily at an hourly interval. So for every resource in that data set, there are numerous different types of curtailments and derates that can be identified. And we're looking exclusively at hours that are derated due to ambient temperature or curtailed due to ambient temperature, as they're labeled in that data set. Prior to this revision, we did not include any hours that didn't have that identifying tag of ambient derate due to temperature. In this revision, we now fill in any hours that are not curtailed or derated for any reason, and we list that resource as full capacity, 0 curtailment, 0 derate. The second major change is that we're applying a single-step multilinear regression rather than multiple steps of single regression. So there's no intermediate step looking at or moving from resource level to unit type or class level. As part of that change, we incorporated new binary variables, basically either 0s or 1s that assign categorical values to each resource. The categories are associated with weather stations, so we can use those category variables to determine or let the regression determine what weather station is associated with each resource and curtailment data point. This allows us to include more data in the analysis. So in the original proposal or proposed methodology, we had to filter out resources that had insufficient data or that had poor fits. Now we can include that data because it contributes to a broader data set. Specifically, that was when there were few hours curtailed within the data set for a particular resource. Finally, each unit type is analyzed separately. So we ended up applying it for exclusively combined cycle and combustion turbine. We ran the analysis for also steam turbines and a couple other types of resources, but found that only those two had statistically significant results, at least for the data set we were using. So this is the regression model, this equation at the top. We basically say that the observed or recorded curtailment or derating, we convert it to percentage. In the original curtailment data, it's megawatts, so we divide by the Emax of the resource to find the percentage for each data point. That value that we get from CAISO data equals this sum of terms, a linear combination of terms. Each of the betas is a regression parameter that that we're trying to solve for. The first variable is temperature, so that's recorded temperature from historic weather data using the nearest weather station to the resource. And then the each of the W terms that you see in that equation is a Boolean variable, meaning valued either 0 or 1, that identifies the closest weather station. So each W, 1, 2, 3, up to N, for N weather stations, is allows the derating value to float for each weather station. And then lastly, there's a final beta with a constant of 1 that just allows the entire data set to float. And what we're really interested in this regression analysis is the beta 1 value. That would be the slope of the derating model applied to a unit type based on temperature. So it should have a unit of degree Celsius per, percent curtailment per degree Celsius. The curtailment or the derate model that we're plugging that value into, the beta 1, is unchanged from the previous methodology, and it looks like this. We're using a piecewise linear function where below a certain threshold temperature that we're calling Ti here, the derated capacity is 100% of the resource's nameplate capacity or Pmax. And then above that temperature, we start derating it by the regression parameter beta 1 applied to the difference between the observed temperature and the threshold temperature Ti. So that TO, I think that's a capital O, not a 0, is the observed temperature. In practical terms, that TO will come from forecasts or climate-informed model in order to forecast derated capacities for power plants. So now we'll go into the preliminary results. The following charts show the results of the multilinear analysis. We determined the beta 1, as it's called in the previous slides, based on historic weather data and curtailments from, or the CAISO curtailment data from the past year and a half or so, and then applied that beta to historic weather data for 30 years of weather data in a few different climate-informed scenarios. So we have the actual historic weather data, we have a climate-informed perturbed weather data set with 1.5 degrees Celsius, also 2.0 degrees Celsius and 3.0 degrees Celsius. That's degrees of global warming above the historic baseline temperature. And then for each of those climate-informed weather models, we have 25th, 50th, and 75th percentiles of severity, I guess. So those, for each global warming percentage, we have local weather of 25, 50, and 75th percentiles warming or severity of warming. So these are the slopes that we found for the combustion turbine and the combined cycle unit types. These values are applied. This is 0.138% per degree Celsius for combustion turbine is applied to all combustion turbine resources. And then based on the location of each resource, the threshold temperature is allowed to move. And that represents what we're calling a resource class, a combination of unit type and weather station. The combined cycle has a slope of 0.97% per degree Celsius. So in the piecewise linear function, that's the slope at which forecast capacities will drop after the threshold temperature. The rest of these slides look at aggregated data across the forecast weather data set, meaning the historic weather data or the 1.5, 2, or 3 degree Celsius warming scenarios for climate-informed forecasting. In the current climate scenario, using 30 years of historic weather data, we see, as a comparison from the previously presented methodology from March, the median derated capacity for combustion turbine was about 96%. Now it's 98% approximately. So the revised methodology reduces the slopes for both combustion turbine and combined cycle. So we end up with slightly higher derated capacities. For combined cycle, we have 96% in the old methodology and 98.7% in the new methodology. We're going to look at some visualizations of more of the data. And I'm using some box and whisker plots to indicate the 99th percentile, 75th percentile, median, 25th percentile, and 1st percentile, meaning the highest capacities, or the 99% highest capacities, down to the 1st percentile lowest capacities. And these are percentiles of hours of derated capacities, including the capacities that we're calling derated that are actually at 100% capacity. So first, we have a visualization of all years, all weather stations, and across the bottom, we have each of the weather scenarios, or climate scenarios. So we have the actual weather, 30 years of weather data that I'm calling 0.0 degrees Celsius, just to have a label, and 100% dial, meaning actually recorded historic data. So we see the, and we have the two unit types at the bottom here. So for combined cycle, we have a little, somewhere around 98.75% median derated capacity, and it goes almost up to 100%. So there are very few hours throughout the 30 years of weather data where we have full 100% capacity shown. And at the other extreme, these would be during the very hottest days throughout those 30 years, we get about 97%. For combustion turbine, we have a steeper slope, so we end up with lower derated capacities and a wider distribution of capacities. So again, we have few hours that actually reach 100% capacity. The median is a little closer to 98%, and the very lowest capacities associated with the warmest days in those 30 years are down below 96%. And then we see in the perturbed climates of 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.0 degree, and 3.0 degrees Celsius, we see slight variations, especially among the different percentiles within of perturbation within each climate scenario. So now we look at a single weather year instead of 30 weather years, and a single weather station. This is in Sacramento, so we picked this one to have relatively high temperatures, which would translate to more extreme derates than the median across all years or all weather stations. So in this case, we do see indeed some more extreme derated capacities going down to almost as low as 95% for the current climate and below 95% for weather, climate-informed forecast weather for combustion turbine. For combined cycle, it gets down to a little over 96%. So that's a particularly warm, well, a typical year, but a warm weather station. Next, we have an unusually warm weather year and a warm weather station, and we see slightly lower derated capacities as would be expected. 1997 being a typical year, 2020 being an atypically warm year. And then we have the data for combined all weather years across 30 years. This is what Sacramento looks like. And then looking at a different weather station now, again, a typical weather year, 1997, in Santa Barbara, KSBA is Santa Barbara. We have, as would be expected, in a more moderate climate, coastal climate, we see tighter distributions across the board and higher minimum derated and median capacities. And slight change, barely perceptible for the warmer weather year of 2020, and pretty similar across 30 years of weather data. So in summary, the new methodology reduced the effects, or reduces the effects of the derated capacities. In general, we see closer capacities to 100% as opposed to the previously proposed or presented derating methodology. In the original methodology, we saw between 96, median around 96% and a minimum of 92% across all weather stations and unit types. In the new methodology, it's closer to 98% median and 94% minimum. The results focus on weather stations and percent capacities, and SERVM results will show physical resources and megawatt capacities. We would apply the percent capacities to individual resource or grouped resources megawatt capacities. And for application, we're looking into how we might be able to use the forecast curtailments or forecast derated capacities in the slice of day framework. We haven't determined or settled on a way to map these results to the slice of day. We have a couple possible slice of day approaches, including using a certain percentile hour from each month's forecast. So looking at a given forecast for a given resource class, we might find the 5th percentile, so a very low capacity or derated capacity around 90 or 95%. As the input for the slice of day. Or we might, instead of looking at a full month, we might look for each hour and pull each most extreme hour from the month, regardless of what day that occurs. So there are a wide variety of ways we could translate the results of this study into slice of day. And we intend to incorporate it into a UCAP framework. I think that's the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, we can move to that.
All right. Eric Little.
Can't hear you, Eric. Let's go to David while Eric's figuring out his mic.
David, are you there?
Yeah. What document is considered the gold standard specification on slice of day at this point?
There's probably a workshop report that came out last year. Jamie can help you locate that.
David, what was the question? The gold standard of?
What is considered to be the gold standard specification on slice of day? So if somebody wants to understand exactly what slice of day requires, where is the specification document that fully walks through that?
So I believe we put together a guide. Maybe Chelsea can clarify if the guide's been posted yet.
No, it hasn't. We're still working on that, but yeah, there will be a slice of day guide that will walk through the history and all of the counting rules and other specific implementation details.
When do you expect that to come out? Because, you know, basically every meeting, it seems it's kind of shifting a little bit. And my recollection is the decision just adopted the SCE approach. But it's been a long time since I've seen anything that really tries to capture everything and pull it together. Even if you just have a draft of that document, I think it would be helpful, because just from the questions alone, I get the sense there's a lot of uncertainty. I'm not sure we're all talking about the same thing at this point.
So I will say, David, that the decisions, both the last two RA reform decisions, did include an appendix that was attempting to kind of start that process of pulling all the kind of rules together. And then the guide's going to be kind of building off that appendix. So I don't know, Kelsey, do you have a timing question or the sense in timing of the
Yeah, I was just going to say within the next few weeks, but in the meantime, it is going to be very similar to Appendix A of Decision 2304010. That's where we laid out most of the details that were determined in that decision. So, like in the interim, any questions about slice of day, that should be your first go-to to look for.
All right, a few weeks is fine. Thanks.
Okay, so Eric's question was, if you do not use UCAP, what would you expect the must offer obligation of a derated resource to be under RAIM?
Kelsey, or Simone, could you read that again?
If you do not use UCAP, what would you expect the must offer obligation of a derated resource to be under RAIM? I guess I'm not understanding, like, if it's derated, wouldn't that be under because of UCAP?
I think that any type of UCAP system, Eric, like anything we adopt on the UCAP front, really needs to be part of our coordination with CAISO in the reforming RAIM. So, I mean, I think what you're pointing out is a double penalty issue, potentially. And so I could just say that will have to be considered in assessing, a UCAP framework, and also in coordination with CAISO and on the RAIM front.
Okay, looks like that is what he was pointing out. Let's go to Luke.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So question for Robert. So on this revised methodology, I'm just wondering, have you looked at what this would mean during like some of the extreme weather events that we've had over the last few years? So like the August 2020 events or the September 2022 events, like what type of a derate would we be seeing in like some of the natural gas plants during those events? And then also just kind of comparing what this model would suggest those derates would be on those days to actual like bid and output data from some plants during that time.
Those particular events would have been in the historic data that went into the regression model. I haven't
completed weather data through 2020. 21 and 22 weather data aren't in our model yet, but the 2020 data was, and so that would be included. If you wanted to go back to your box and whisker plots, specifically the 2020, you have 2020 on one page. Probably that is what would be a 1% event. So current climate, probably the 100 to 0 centigrade, that bottom there would be, the very bottom of the plot there is probably that hot event you're talking about. And then the very bottom of the plot over there with combustion turbines is probably that 2020 event you were referencing. I would imagine that counted as a 1% event.
Yeah, and I haven't tried comparing it to the actual CAISO data directly.
Well, you did. We did. You pulled ambient derate.
Yeah, it's in the training.
Out of the CAISO.
It's in the training data, but I haven't manually compared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is suggesting a 1% derate for combined cycles and a 1.5% for CTs.
For this particular weather station.
Seeing as that, so depending on how we want to do this, we can create an exceedance, we could use a median, we could use even the one, anywhere on that box and whisker plot seems fair game for the slice a day tool. When it comes to the the reliability modeling, every point on there is in the model somewhere. And the amount of reliability reserves, including any PCAP we need to add, will be larger by the extent to which, during extreme events, some of the existing resources come down in terms of capacity.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can put this in informal comments, but I'd recommend just doing a manual comparison as well, because I'm surprised the derates are less than I would have expected, I guess.
Mm.
That's all for me.
Okay.
Hey, Donald. This is Noah Tom from Middle River Power. Hey, on Lou's question, I wonder if this is an annualized value, right? So if you were to do monthly, you might see much more different variations in the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could see like in this one, you'd get 12 different plots, and those plots would move around, probably look like a annual weather,
like a weather pattern over the
temperature
year.
pattern.
Got it. So have you thought about whether or not this will impact the forced outage rate that you use in the LLE study itself?
The forced outage rate comes from GADS data, which looks at equipment failure.
Not forced out. Not ambient temp.
It's possible that there is equipment failure due to hot temperatures, but I would imagine that most of the equipment failure is due to overuse, just its use patterns. I imagined that the forced outage rate would be a secondary, like another factor that is added on top of this ambient factor. In my head, at least, there's two sides. There's the equipment failure, and then there's the hot temperature, and they would be, I think, additive in the way that they play in the model. But it's fair. It's fair to say that there might be some equipment failure caused by hot temperatures.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'll see if our folks, as they how they report the GADS data, not too close to it, but in thinking through, if we're almost double counting, if it's possible that we're double counting the forced outage ambient data, both on the LLE side as well as the supply counting side then.
Yeah, it would be important to segregate out, maybe only use certain cost codes from the GADS data.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any insight on that, Robert? You've looked at the GADS data. Have you noticed any ones that were tagged with ambient conditions?
I don't remember. It's been a while.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. It's Kyle Novice with Cal Advocates. Kind of following up on Noah's first question there about monthly versus annual derates. Is there a reason why you wouldn't make these monthly granularity? Because it seems like with the problems caused by ambient derates, you're really aiming to capture something about the variation that does happen month to month. So why would we prefer an annual amount rather than doing it by month?
We haven't preferred an annual amount. We're just showing an annual amount.
Okay.
In the model, of course, it's hourly. It's hourly by weather year by power plant. So in the model, it's granular. It's just that when we're showing here, we're showing an annual amount. I just wanted to show we just wanted to show what the magnitude of these derates were likely to be. You know, are they 10, 15, 20? Are they 2? Just want to show the magnitude, basically. But I think in previous, you presented a monthly value in your previous presentation, right?
I don't remember what I presented.
I've seen, I've seen monthly values from your model. We could put out monthly values. There's no problem. There's no reason not to. Yeah.
We could probably just publish the work visualizations.
Sure. Sure.
And you can change the axes as you want.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Any other questions?
Anything else you want to talk about before we conclude?
We do have one more question.
All right.
Just a quick one. For these weather impact on the curves, it's super useful. I know in the workshops when they presented these, it actually shows like a derate curve for a given environment or plant. Just from a presentation standpoint, it's I think pretty useful to see of like how does, you know, with temperature like on the X, how does the actual capacity, you know, decline. But just a note on presentation, it's a little bit more intuitive, I think, than the box and whiskers to see. But that's it.
Thanks. In the original presentation from March, I showed the piecewise linear function. So the only thing that would change from that is the slope. And intercept. So.
Any last questions? I guess that's it.
All right. Donald, do you guys want to close this out? Did you have a next step slide?
Yeah, well, I think the next steps are different for each one, but we just throw back to the next steps for the slice a day tool. I think we probably already talked about what that was. Let's get right back and show it. Right there, I think we were going to give parties about 7 to 10 days to give informal comments on the slice a day tool. Then I think we were going to re-release or get or put out another revised slice a day tool within a month, within 3-4 weeks after the informal comments. I think the rest of these next steps continue as detailed on this slide. I think the further refinement that proposal to do in Q1 of 2024. That might include possible addition of UCAP requirements, including the thermal derates that we just mentioned. Those, I think, are the next steps. So we will let parties know. I still think whether or not we tell parties that they're doing 7 to 10 days, parties should think that they should tell us informal comments on the slice a day tool within 7 to 10 days. And we'll release a revised one with maybe some more documentation of it in about a month, before Thanksgiving.
Okay, great. And then I think there was also the action item to work on a kind of set of milestones to the extent we can, make that more transparent, so that parties know what's coming on this front, and circulate that to the service list. We will be uploading the recording today onto the website. We'll also be posting both the Excel files and the deck, if it hasn't already been posted, to the history page. So you can find those materials on the website. And I think that is it. I really appreciate everybody's participation today. I know this is a very complex topic, and appreciate everybody's thoughts and work in this area, and look forward to informal comments and making it a more robust tool.
Well, thank you very much.